171 times 0.45, 171,000 is the portioned value. Now we're not done yet, because we're going to move down to actually calculating the tax. This isn't the tax. This is just the amount of property that the city will tax on. So that's a good thing, right? They're not going to tax us on the full amount. They're just going to tax us on a part of a little less than half of your value, right? So that's good. So far, so good? All right, now this is the big lesson. This is the big part of the lesson. Calculating the municipal property tax owing. So this is how much you're going to have to pay to the city of Winnipeg, and taxes, it's kind of like income tax. They come due every year. Usually in the spring, you have options. You can pay them off monthly. You can sign up for a monthly program. If you don't sign up monthly, then they're due kind of when income tax is due, which kind of sucks. Okay, so again, this is stuff we talked about, why city taxes. Now, the tax rate, the property tax rate in Winnipeg is known as a mill rate. That's another weird term to use. This is actually what most cities call their city tax, the mill rate. And this is just it's another name for property tax rate. If you really want to know the origin, I think it comes from, it's French. Mill is French per thousand. So again, it's a per thousand. And it's just what the French hundreds of years ago started calling their property tax rate the mill rate, and it just stuck in North America, so that's why it's called the mill rate. Okay, so every year the municipality sends a property tax bill out to every property owner. The amount of tax owing is calculated using this formula. Take a look at the formula. Does it look familiar to you? Tax is the tax rate divided by 1,000 times the portion assessed. I'm going to do mine a little different, so I hope that doesn't confuse you. I'm going to do it like I always do mine. I'm going to do my property tax. I just switched two places, equals the portion value of your property, kind of like we did the mortgage rate, divided by 1,000 times the mill rate. So it's going to look the same as our, I stick the money all here, so it's the portioned value divided by 1,000 times the mill rate.
Doesn't matter.
No. Robert lives in a municipality with a tax rate of 17.34 mills. This is the mill rate. His property tax has a portioned assessed value of 170,000. Calculate his property tax. Okay, so the property tax equals, I always take the money divided by 1,000 times whatever rate. I remember what we were using for mortgages, it was called the amortization rate. This time it's the mill rate. Yep. I just like keeping things consistent. Okay, so I have 170 divided by 1,000, 170,000. Okay, so what do you guys get? 2,947? Yep. So this is what he pays for property tax.
That's a year.
Yeah. Every year, just like, how many people have paid their income tax? How many people have ever done their own income tax or filed their own income tax? Yeah. So that's in the spring, right? So this is, you know how you have to do a lot of the work for income tax? All the work is done for you, by the way. We don't have to ever calculate our own. The city just sends the bill in the mail in the spring. They say, this is how much you owe. Okay, and then you should always look at it though and make sure that it's reasonable and makes sense. that the assessed value of your property agrees with what you think your house is worth. Every so often there's like these little mini town halls, and you can go and you can I guess argue to have your assessed value of your home decreased. A few years ago, the city went through some neighborhoods and just really jacked up their assessed values. And a lot of the homeowners got really angry, and then they went and argued, and some of them got their assessed values lowered. So it is possible. Okay, so that's it. It's not that difficult since we've used this formula before, right? Let's take a look at this last example on this page. Calculating the portion assessed and the municipal property tax. So doing everything kind of. So let's see what this one looks like. Kayla owns a property in the same municipality with, I guess, the same as the previous person. So the mill rate would be, we'll just use the, 17.34. Okay. With an assessed value of 160 or 360,000. The portion percent is 45%. Calculate her total property tax. Okay. So this time, they're giving us the total value, and she doesn't get taxed on the total value, which is good. First, we're going to figure out what her portion value is. Portion value is going to be, I take the total value and just find 45% of that. Okay. So this is the portioned value. Another way maybe to define it, to me this is more descriptive. This is the taxable value of her property, right? The taxable value. But unfortunately they don't call it that. They call it portioned value, but this is the amount she's going to be taxed on. So now her actual property tax, once you do that initial step, I just take this new taxable amount, divide by 1,000, and I times it by the mill rate. Okay, someone can check work 280908. Any agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is her property tax. So I think the math is certainly pretty straightforward and something familiar. I think all the new terms are unfamiliar, right? So that's the hard part. That's the part that I would be writing down on a study sheet to try and keep my... Are we okay with this stuff? Can I kind of go on then? Okay. I'm just going to go on. I'll finish off this and I'll tell you, I am not going to be here tomorrow. Unfortunately, I have to be away at another PD, but you've got a math sub coming in and Jane's here. So what I thought I'd do is I'd go through all these examples today, give you some time to start the practice assignment. What you can do tomorrow is work on the practice assignment, and then I am going to give you a little hand-in assignment too. I'll get the sub to give it to you for marks, right? So you can finish up your homework tomorrow and start to work on the hand-in, and I'll have the sub give you the instructions. But basically, you know, when you do hand-ins, you can use your notes, you can collaborate, you can ask Jane for help. Ideally, you try to want to do it on your own because that's what shows up on a test, but it's a collaborative space tomorrow. You can ask questions, use your notes, and all that stuff, okay?
So finish and hand in tomorrow?
Yeah, and if you hand in early, you're free to go, right? But if you need the whole time is here, and you've got a sub who knows math, and Jane. Where is Jane? There she is. Okay, yeah, Jane's gonna be. Okay. All right, the only last thing that might throw a wrinkle into property tax is something called a local improvement. This doesn't happen all the time. This is a very special case. Selena just asked about the property tax. Is it every year? Yes, every single year you have to pay your property tax, no fail. Local improvements only come along every so often, and you'll see why in a moment. Sometimes the city, I'm just going to substitute the word for the city for municipality, sometimes the city makes improvements in the neighborhood. For example, putting a sidewalk in, putting extra lighting in, Or replacing lighting. They've kind of gone along in the last few years and replaced those old sodium lights with the new kind of more LED lights sometimes. So they'll make those changes every so often. When they do, the people living on that block or that street are charged an extra tax. And you might not know that. But that will show up on your property tax bill. You have to look for it though. You might notice your taxes going up a little bit, not knowing why. If you look closely, there might be a little improvement. Sometimes local improvements are kind of voluntary, like they're not necessary for the street. They'll take a poll, and if people on the neighbor in the block don't want, for example, there are still a few streets in Winnipeg with gravel roads. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Like you'll be in a neighborhood and all of a sudden it won't be paved, it'll be asphalted or kind of just graveled. And the city hasn't paved it. That means the people on that street, the majority of them don't want it paved because their taxes would go up, right? And they're just fine with it having.
Or there's no sidewalks.
Right,
No
that's
sidewalks.
right. There's no sidewalks. There's actually, even in the middle of the city, every so often you'll come to a street with like a little ditch,
Yeah.
right? So it's funny, and that just means the city, people on that street have voted not to have that improvement done. So some changes, though, you don't get a vote on. Like when they're replacing lights with more energy efficient stuff like that, they just go ahead and do it. But every so often, there'll be a change that has to be approved by the residents and it's not approved. But here's just an example of some improvements. You might get your, if you don't live on a paved street, the asphalt has to be resurfaced. Boulevard construction, sometimes they build a new little boulevard. Concrete sidewalks, concrete street paving. That's gravel put down, land drainage, lighting, oiling. That's when you have those asphalt roads or those kind of, they put oil on it, you know, because it starts to smell. Ornamental lighting, road oiling. Sometimes they have to do sewer work or repair water main breaks. That's a bad one in Winnipeg because we have so much our extreme temperatures. That happens quite a bit to some streets. So the good thing is this is a really easy thing to work out. It's much easier than the property tax formula. What they do is they take every one of these things is worth a different amount, and this is the only ones that we're really going to study. I think there's a lot more actually in the whole City of Winnipeg handbook, but we're just kind of highlighting these. And the term is, what this means is term 10 years, term 3 years, term 10 years. If you got land drainage system put into your street or had to be repaired, that means you're paying for it for 20 years. So it'll show up for 20 years on your property tax bill. Lane oiling, that's just an annual. You pay for it in 1 year, and unless they do it again, you're done. Okay? And then this is the cost per frontage. That's another new word. Okay? So you can see there's varying prices. What's the cheapest thing that you could have done to your street? For lane lighting, right? That would be the cheapest thing. That's probably replacing bulbs. The most expensive thing on this list is asphalt surfacing, right? Isn't it? What is it? Oh, right, concrete street paving, right, putting concrete down. That's almost $40 a frontage foot, and I'll explain that in a moment. And then asphalt would be the second most, and then they go down in price, right? So what that means, frontage is how wide your property is, okay? So I'll just show you what frontage is. So let's say this is your street. And in the City of Winnipeg, and this is your neighbor's house, this is your house, you've got a longer house, this is your next neighbor's house, right? So this is the frontage. It's just the width of your property. So the wider your property, the more you're going to pay for any of these changes because they're happening at the street level, right? So every so often you'll also run into a house that has a double lot. Have you ever seen one of those? Like there's no house built beside it, so they have kind of extra space. They would pay more for any street improvement because they've got a double lot, so they actually have more frontage. They actually use more of the street, right? That's the thinking anyway. So it just depends how wide your property is, not how long it is, how wide it is, how much of the street you take up. So basically, let's just say I had a frontage of, I don't know, 20 feet, and my neighbor had a frontage of 40 feet, and we got let's see, we had our water mains repaired. I would only get charged 20 feet for at $11.39. My neighbors would get charged 40 feet at $11.39, right? And that just gets added onto your property tax. That makes sense? So local improvements don't happen every year. There's a certain number of years you have to pay, and it's all in the City of Winnipeg manual or handbook that you could look up probably online. And we've given you a selection here. Okay. So that only happens if it says local improvements. And if we give you a question with local improvements, we'd also have to give you the frontage, right? You can't calculate it unless I give you the frontage. So let's do this last example. This one talks about local improvements. So the city makes improvements, I did all that, okay? Let's look at example 5. Robert owns a lot that has a frontage of 40 feet. Just realized I shouldn't have marked up that whole space down there, right? I'm gonna use another book. He has a frontage of 40 feet. This year he has to pay for the following home improvements. He's gonna pay for, I'll just flip over here. He's going to pay for lane paving and water mains. Okay. I think it's alphabetical, right? So here's lane paving. So lane paving, I'm just doing it in pencil lightly, and water mains. Oh, I actually just fluked on those numbers, you guys. I could have just used my 40 feet, right? Okay. Calculate how much he'll be charged for these improvements. Okay, so it's just $11.39 times 40. You could actually add these costs up if you wanted in times 40. I'll do them separately, times 40. This was the water main, and this was lane paving. So it's just, yeah, it's just a real quick calculation. So I get 455.6, right? Which would mean that's 60 cents. And 664. It adds up though, doesn't it? It doesn't seem like it's going to be a lot. And if you're already paying about $2,000 in taxes, this is going to add on another $1,119 in local improvement. So you can see why some people, if they have the choice, opt out, and they say, I'm good with having a bit of dust on my road or whatever. So the local improvement tax will be added on to his property tax bill, okay? That's it. So I think pretty straightforward, right? I think the hardest part of this lesson is learning all the vocabulary. Okay, and now the hard part is going to be putting it all together, right? So let's just take a look at the assignment. We have a bit of time left, right? Yeah. So you can at least get started and ask me questions, and I can talk to those people who missed the test. Now it is actually giving you some guidance. So the hand-in assignment tomorrow, I'm not going to give you guidance. I'm not going to say see example 2, see example 3. But this is kind of nice because there's so many parts. So these 3 questions says see example 2, these next 3 see example 3 and 4, and then local improvement see example 5. And that's it for this. And then we're going to, then we'll kind of put everything together on the next lesson. But it's all kind of chunked out for you, okay? So get started. I think the big terms for today are just knowing the difference between the total assessed value, and that's usually just given to you in the question, right? Unless it's a farm, the only time you'll have to do any calculations is if it's a farm where they have the house and the land separate. But if it's just a house, you'll be given the assessed value in the question, and then you have to find the portioned value, right? I called it the taxable value. So this is the this is where you take the assessed value and you times it by the portion percent. And that's just giving you the taxable value, right? Because the city's not going to tax you on the whole thing. And then after that, it's just, we take the portion value, what you just calculated, divide by 1,000, and times the mill rate, which again, you have to be given that. And that equals your property tax. And then sometimes you have a local improvement, right? So you're just gonna take your frontage times your local improvement charge, and that's gonna give you your local improvement tax. Okay? So in total, so far, there's up to there's two taxes you're calculating, right? The city tax and the local improvement. You don't always get this one, but you always get this one every year if you're a property owner. Okay? So I'll give you the rest of the class. You can get a start at least. You can ask me some questions. And then if people want to come up and talk to me about the test they missed and